If you're new to the channel, you might have found me out by watching my most recent video covering the Summoner Necromancer. We're just using the Golem to do millions and millions and millions of damage and absolutely crushing the content. Now, the funny part about the fight that you're going to be watching right now, let me just go ahead and toss that in, is that everybody has been asking me, basically across the board, which version of the minions do you think is stronger? Do you think it's Shadow Minions or Plain Minions? Plain Minions basically gets to use Army of the Dead to get 100% damage multiplier, whereas Shadow Minions has to deal with Shadow Blight that has a little bit less uptime, but has a 120% multi, so a 2.2 damage multiplier. But the other benefit of Shadow Minions, you kind of just become unkillable. This was the easiest fight against a boss that I've had in the pit thus far. This is my highest clear at this point, at tier 61. This build can go significantly higher than this. I think that can realistically get up to pit 100 if you have good enough gear. Now here's the funny part, and let's go ahead and bring it back over to Mac. Hey, how's it going? Here's the funny part about what you just saw. This is the Shadow Minions build. The idea is that you're going to be using Blighted for 120% multi, like I just said. You're going to be using Ultimate Shadow to cast Bone Storm. Bone Storm with Shielding Storm is going to trigger 6% base life every single time that it deals damage, and when the Shadow damage proc deals damage. So it's like a 4 times X on your total barrier generation. On top of that, you have your Golem and you both triggering Bone Storm at the same time. You get a huge amount of DR. The survivability is crazy. But I realized something walking into this pit. I didn't turn on the Shadow Minion part of this Shadow Minions build. I forgot. I was using Kalan's Edict. I just screwed up. I didn't click this. It just did that without Shadow Blade. Let's go ahead and talk about it. So because I've literally just released a kind of all-encompassing, here's what you kind of need to know about how the base minion build works, I'm not going to bore you with too many details, but I am going to cover things just so that people this is your first time seeing a minion build at all, especially the Shadow Minion build, you can at least get an idea of like the key core concepts you need to walk away from. But before we go any further, if you are quite literally brand new here, if you've never seen any of my videos, or if I just keep showing up in your algorithm and you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. We're on a huge push right now. My channel basically died when everybody decided that D4 was bad, which makes sense. But in the last month, we've already gotten like 2,000 subscribers, and I think most of them are within this last week, and I would love to just see that upward trajectory. Okay, that's enough shilling for me. Use the timestamps down below if you just want to look at gear, or the Book of the Dead, or the Paragon Board, etc. I have a Diablo 4 planner on Maxroll that I'm going to update with the information that I find here, so I'll be able to put that down in the description below as well. But let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start with the skill tree so you understand the decisions that we're making. Now, you're going to notice that for a Shadow build, we sure are basically just abusing the fact that Blighted and Shadow Blade exist, and then for everything else, what we're doing is maximizing our total damage output and utility so that our Golem can walk up and do big booms with his big old meaty blood fists. To that end, we have Blight. Blight is going to add a 20% damage multiplier for our minions. We're going to trigger this very specifically through Bone Prison. If you don't like the Bone Prison playstyle, you can just spam Blight yourself, but we want to use these things in concert because it's incredibly powerful. Hued Flesh is going to help us to generate corpses. Like I said, we are using Bone Prison. The reason why we're using Bone Prison is for 3 very special inclusions here. 1, Bone Prison, with an aspect called Plunging Darkness, will cast Blight on the area underneath it. This Blight puddle is larger than the typical Blight puddle, and it's going to pull in more monsters since we're also using the Void aspect. So Bone Prison is a one-stop shop of basically getting 3 effects in one, on top of the fact that the actual Bone Prison itself is just a really good deterrent for managing monster AI, because monsters like to attack you instead of your minions. Why? I don't know. Diablo 4 devs don't want minions to be able to hold aggro unless you very specifically use taunt, and Bone Prison helps with that. Secondly, Bone Prison applies 8 seconds of vulnerability. There's a lot of time where your corpse tendrils isn't off of cooldown now, and being able to proactively apply vulnerable without waiting for a corpse is a great way to get a quick kill with your Golem. On top of that, we're using the fact that Bone Prison is going to reduce cooldown. I wish the skill part wasn't like so long-winded, but I've been getting an insane amount of questions about Bone Prison, and I just want to get this information out there. The very cool part about Bone Prison is that it will reduce the cooldowns of everything on your skill bar per target that it hits, up to a maximum of 3 seconds. And since we're using Plunging Darkness to cast Blight and then Void pull, what happens is you cast Bone Prison, all the monsters get pulled in, Bone Prison starts around them, they get vulnerable, they reduce your cooldowns by 3 seconds, and then they're all just sitting there and nice and pretty for your Golem to come whap them. The cool part about all of this in tandem is that what you can do is you can actually send your Golem running at a pack of monsters putting its skill on cooldown, and then before he gets there, cast Bone Prison to basically group them all up, and then he'll walk in and hit them. So you basically get to do the speedball special from Colossus and Wolverine, right? Where you get to immediately reduce the cooldown of Golem by 3 seconds before he even gets there. And then since we're also using hulking aspect, he can then further reduce his cooldown, so this thing is just up all the time. You're going to be a Golem spamming machine. All right, I'm going to try to go a little bit more quickly here. We're obviously using all the masteries so that our minions can actually stay alive, and most notably for our Golem can actually do damage. Since we're consuming corpses all the time for Flesh Eater, Fueled by Death gives us a big damage multi here. Also, just the couple, like the individual point in Grim Harvest here, basically generates all the essence that you need to be able to cast Decrepify, so you should basically never be out of essence. Decrepify, I'm max ranks Decrepify here. Do not sleep on max ranks Decrepify. It's a huge amount of damage reduction and a huge amount of survivability because you're slowing monsters down by greater than half of their total movement speed. On top of that, the cooldown reduction from Abhorrent Decrepify allows us to spam everything that much more easily. Amplify damage for the damage, Death's Embrace for the damage as well as the survivability, movement speed here from Death's Approach, and then obviously our mastery. Moving down into Corpse Tendrils, you are going to have a couple extra points, so I dropped them into here just for the cooldown reduction. This is going to help pull in everything. Don't sleep on using Corpse Tendrils with the Corpse Tendrils temper on our gear, because that's going to pull a huge amount of monsters. The more people sitting in one spot at the same time, the more effective our Golem Smash is going to be. And then just to have redundancy here, we are applying both slow and vulnerable with Corpse Tendrils, even though we have multiple sources elsewhere. In case you didn't want to do this, I would still highly recommend doing it. The 3 points in Necrotic Carapace allow us to very easily generate Fortify, which basically just stops one-shots. Basically, the way that Fortify works is that once you get fully fortified, meaning you've hit your maximum life total in Fortify, or rather your current life total, you're going to reduce incoming damage by 15%. Getting hit is going to reduce your life and your Fortify. You'll have to generate it again, but this is basically like a one-time damage stopper, just to make sure that you survive one-shots long enough to be able to react to the situation around you. Down into the ultimate skill tree, obviously we're using Bone Storm. We do want the critical strike chance here to be able to reach 100% crit chance with our minions. And then the 3 points into Inspiring Leader, 3 points into Hellbent Commander, and then obviously the 3 points into Golem Mastery. You notice I'm actually missing a lot of plus skill ranks here, and the majority of my masterworking you're going to see on my gear is kind of Trash City. That's why I'm so impressed with the build as it stands right now. You don't need Death's Defense, you don't need Bonded in Essence, don't worry about. And then obviously Shadowblade to actually activate the primary damage sources of the build. I'm now going to go over Book of the Dead because I think that would make more sense before you see the aspects. Again, for the Reaper skeletons, this is currently bugged. If you select Chance to Generate a Corpse, they will also reduce cooldown. If I wasn't using this in general, I prefer Defenders with the ability to taunt because this applies a massive amount of stagger to bosses for our Shadow Mages. Yes, you could use the Increase Your Damage for each Shadow Mage. That actually will then recursively buff your minions again because it buffs you and then it buffs them. Yes, I have tested it. I've shown this in testing previously. That'll also be in the video that I put out. But I'm currently using the Shadow Mages Fire an Additional Bolt just so that we can have a higher uptime of Shadow Blight in general. I've seen a lot of people saying that minions can't proc Shadow Blight. They absolutely can. Golem, Blood Golem, do big drain, do big damage, big multi. It's the best. It's just the best one. There's nothing else that even comes close. Blood Golem is your go-to. Okay, great. I'm going to go through the gear as fast as I possibly can without beating any nails into this board that I've already smashed in here. For the helmet, we're looking for cooldown reduction, any good stats for survivability. We need to hit a couple total armor rolls so we can get up to 9,230 armor. So once you hit that number on your gear, you don't have to keep putting armor onto your gear. You can put other stuff there. And then we want to be making sure to hit 100% total Corpse Tendrils radius through our tempers, as well as 100% Decrepify size radius through our tempers. Prioritize Corpse Tendrils over Decrepify. I only have one Decrepify roll here. Actually, I might have two at this point, and I'm not hitting 100% yet, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. Just get as much as you possibly can. For the armor, we want Golem Mastery, and then again, more survivability here. And then for the aspect on the helmet, I completely forgot. We're using Void, like I said, so that when Bone Prison casts Blight, it will pull everything in. For the aspect here, we're using Shielding Storm. For the gloves, attack speed, crit chance, intelligence, maximum life, any additive damage that's relevant. If you have 100% chance to crit, go at crit damage. If you don't, go with base damage or vulnerable damage. It doesn't really matter. Then we want to start tempering on Golem damage for our offensive tempers here. And then this is where we're going to be putting Plunging Darkness again to trigger Blight off of Bone Prison so we can trigger Void, so we can make that fastball special with our Golem. For the pants, more survivability, as much survivability as you can possibly get onto this thing. You'll notice that I have tempered on 1 resistance roll. That's not really required at this point. I would like maximum life, or even potentially a lucky hit chance to be able to apply a crowd control effect. Here's where we're putting a cult for the additional 2 minions. And then onto our boots, just movement speed really. And then again, additional survivability through intelligence with damage and resistances, and then maximum life here. You could also go with essence per second if you don't like using the Bone Prison, you just want to spam Blight. That'll help to offset you here. And then you'll notice that we're not using a mobility aspect. Instead, we're using hulking. Hulking gives it a 12% chance every single time it hits a target with its cleaving attack, meaning that it hits monsters in an area to be able to reduce its own cooldown, and then also proactively generate corpses. The reason why I'm not using a mobility aspect here is because once you're pushing into higher tier pit, I don't need to be speed running this thing. I think right now we have a decent amount of mobility. If I were to go take a look at it, yeah, I'm at 153%. You cap out at 200%. We're moving fast enough. We need to be able to survive and stack on as much damage and utility as possible. For the temper, just toss on mobility here so you don't feel like you're running through molasses. For the amulet, I would like attack speed, critical strike chance, and then Hellbent commander ranks here. This is where we're also going to be putting Golem active cooldown reduction, and then Golem damage. If you feel like your Golem is actually like reducing its own cooldown effectively enough, which I don't personally feel like that is true for my build, you can go with ultimate cooldown reduction so you can have Bone Storm up more often. For the rings, realistically, if we could just get crit chance, attack speed, and then intelligence, or maximum life for more survivability, or some type of damage, that would be perfect. More Golem activation, more Golem damage. This is where we're going to be putting reanimation for a really high multiplier there. Second ring, same thing like I just said, but here's where we can be putting Frenzied Dead. Now, I'm going to have to make a whole video just about attack speed, but here's the very quick and dirty. There are 2 attack speed caps, plus attack speed, like so right here, the attack speed on my ring goes into cap 1. Frenzied Dead, things from aspects, special effects that give you attack speed, goes into cap 2. Both of these can get up to 100%. You only need to hit a total of 100% attack speed to be able to max out the cult leader node in the Paragon board. It doesn't matter if it's a necro attack speed, minion attack speed, or from a special effects like Frenzied Dead. You take all those numbers, you put them together, and if you reach 100, that's maxed out. Now, how much attack speed do you actually need? There's something called breakpoints. Not every single weapon is the same. Not every single attack is the same. Not even every single minion or golem is the same. I can't tell you the exact thing. Just try to hit the cap. If you don't hit both caps, that's okay. Just hit 100% in total attack speed, and that can include Frenzied Dead, okay? I promise you I'll get you a better video out on that soon. It's just, we don't know the answer yet. For the weapon, I am using a one-handed scythe. 1, life on kill is just generally good for keeping you alive as well as your minions. Also, it just has a higher base damage than a wand because it's slightly slower, but you could be using a wand if you wanted lucky hit chance. Basically what that would do is increase how often you trigger Decrepify for cooldown, but with hulking for our golem, with using Bone Prison for cooldown and Decrepify as base cooldown, on top of the fact that we just basically have permanent uptime on Bone Storm, I don't feel like you really need it, but it wouldn't be terrible. As far as stats, intelligence, any damage that you apply a lot of the time, so again, crit or vuln, and then I'm personally going with maximum life since they removed attack speed from these things. For your tempers here, we're going to want minion attack speed and golem damage. Now, I hear you asking this question in your brain right now. Mac, you're a shadow minion build. What about your shadow mages? I think they're trash. I'm personally not looking to scale them. There may be a world where they are just significantly better for like speed farming, open world content, etc., etc. But pushing into the pit, you need your golem to walk up and do a couple 100 million damage with this smash. That's why we're going to continue to prioritize them here. This is where we're putting the blighted aspect to be able to get that 120% damage multi. And then on the offhand, wow, this is a lot. Intelligence, critical strike chance. You could also go with lucky hit chance here. If you didn't have it, you could also go with cooldown reduction here, which is probably what I would want. But I just have a greater affix, intelligence, and maximum life here. And it's feeling really good to be sitting at 30,000 max life. Again, minion attack speed and then more golem damage. And this is where we're putting ultimate storm to basically activate the entirety of this build. Again, I'm going to have a D4 planner in the description below. You can use that. You don't have to copy this, but if you wanted to pause and listen to my just kind of like reasons why I'm doing this here, I wouldn't be offended. We're going to go lightning round again. And luckily my Paragon board is actually good because I finally respect. In the starter board, we're going to be putting Scourge. This is going to get us another 1.1 multi whenever we apply our shadow damage over time to a target from Ultimate Shadow, as well as Bone Prison casting Blight. We're going to be picking up every single node that says maximum life. If you're not doing this, you're building your Paragon board wrong, or you're not trying to push the pit. We don't care about the armor here, just pick up the damage to be able to path out. Up into our next board, we're actually building into Bone Graft. What a weird board to build into. Well, we're going to be doing Amplify. It's going to apply a 1.1 whenever we apply a curse. We only care about the resistances here, and we're going to be hitting minimum investment glyphs. The reason why we're putting Bone Graft second is because Bone Graft actually has a double effect on the maximum life node in its board. So this one bad boy right here, along with the other three, is a whopping 14% maximum life. Do not sleep on Tenacity. It is the best rare node in the Paragon board now. After that, we're going to build over into Scent of Death. We want to pick up the maximum life here. And then you'll notice I haven't even finished leveling up Territorial, but this would get us another 10% damage reduction against targets. If you're looking for more damage, you can put the Exploit glyph here as well, because it's also a dexterity. And the way that I have this built out will get you the dex minimum once this actually has its radius increased. Building over into Flesh Eater, we're going to be picking up Corporeal for a 1.1 damage multi of physical damage. Again, we don't actually care about shadow damage at all. We care about our Golem, and our Golem does physical damage. This is also going to further increase the amount of resistances that we get from this single node. And then this is where we're picking up Flesh Eater. People ask me all the time, how do you trigger Flesh Eater? You gotta click Raise Skeleton. Y'all ain't out there clicking Raise Skeleton. It gets you a 30% damage multiplier for your Golem. It heals them for 40% of their maximum life so that they actually survive. And I promise you, you're not clicking Raise Skeleton enough. Click this skill. Ding dang it. It has some amount of cooldown. What is it? 8 seconds? It's up for 8 seconds. You should be clicking this every 6 seconds. And the reason why that's so important, again, is because that's going to be able to activate Flesh Eater for you so that you can have as high of an uptime on this 40% damage multiplier as possible. Next, we're going to be building down into our minion board, the Cult Leader board. This is where we're putting Dead Razor. Dead Razor is great because it's going to increase their damage reduction, but also get you a 15% damage multi whenever your minions deal damage to an enemy. So that takes a little bit of time to ramp up. Building down through Puppeteer, just be able to pick up this minion attack speed, and then obviously picking up Cult Leader. Remember, you need a total of 100% attack speed. I just do not care how you get there. And it works in breakpoints. So if you have 20% attack speed and 39% attack speed, you get the same multiplier out of this. You need to get up to 40% attack speed before you would get the next damage multiplier. Capiche? Great. Building over into Bloodbath, this is where we're going to be socketing Essence. Essence is going to get us a 22% damage multiplier when we crit, whenever the target isn't healthy, which at least at this point, we're not just walking around and one-shotting the bosses in pits. Sadly, they went and scaled them higher than our damage can do. But this means we're going to pick up a huge amount of multiplier, only hit minimum investment, and then we're going to build over to Thick Hide, again, because it gives us maximum life. Don't ignore the maximum life nodes. They're worth it. For the last board, we're going to be building into Hulking Monstrosity. We're just going to be putting a minimum investment of Golem here. This is probably like one of my most favorite Paragon board setups because it just, I don't know, it reminds me of Dr. Seuss. It looks like Cindy Lou Who's hair. You know what I mean? Again, we don't care about the additive damage. We have thousands of additive damage. Don't worry about it. We're just looking for that 25% damage multiplier. And there you go. That's the Shadow Minion build. Just strictly greater survivability. Shoutouts to Barbarian, who totally called out the fact that without Shielding Storm and Ultimate Shadow and Bone Storm, you probably weren't going to be able to survive well enough. And that being said, I was able to clear tier 60 and would continue to be able to clear tier 60 and above pits with the Golem build that I showed you just 2 days ago. The issue being that you literally just had to play better. Now, the cool part about this is that it adds on a lot of wiggle rooms so that people can start speed farming the highest resource that you need, which is the Neath Iron. You have to do tier 61 and above. And then the added survivability is probably going to allow us to survive damage, again, very comfortably up until about tier 100. And then I think that's where getting greater affixes and really good crits on our masterworks are going to have to start carrying over and really picking up the majority of the work to actually get us to push even higher. Is there a definitive answer? Is Shadow Minions strictly better than pure Minions? I think the answer is yes. I think it's fairly easy to see that that's true. Now, this is very specifically as it relates to pushing pit tiers. I generally think if you're trying to play a minion build and you're just trying to do like speed farming lower pit tiers or doing Hell Tides or just running Nightmare Dungeons or doing Whispers, etc., you're probably going to want to build into mages, and maybe I should just build like a speed farming easy content type minion build, because not everybody's looking to push pit. But at least for right now, that's the current zeitgeist, that's the current hoopla, what everybody needs to know about. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, subscribe to the channel if you're new, leave a like, leave a comment if you have any questions, concerns, thoughts, ideas. Check the pinned comment, check the description. That's where the build planners are going to be. Thank you so much for watching this video. I truly hope that it helps you to walk into this weekend enjoying the minion build of your dreams. And as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next one.